So thank you for joining me today for another Freelance Discussions. In just a moment, I am going to have on Brent Birch, author of the book, The Grand Prairie, A History of Duck Hunting's Hallowed Ground. Amazing guy and an amazing book. We had him on the Duck Gun podcast, and if this is just going to be a quick hitter here, 5-10 minute interview with this guy. And if you like what you hear, head on over to the Duck Gun podcast. I will put that link in the description. You can hear a full hour on this topic. I'm telling you guys, if you love duck hunting, you're going to love this book. But before we have him pop on here, I want to remind you to check out Patreon. It is a fan funding site where you can help me out with what I'm doing and see a lot of extra FDH content. If you're not into that, don't worry about it. Just forget I even said it. Because I'm going to be putting 99% of my videos here on YouTube. But over the past 3 years, I have been able to siphon off a little bit of extra content, some extra hunts, and some stuff over there. So if you're interested in doing any kind of fan funding, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit of extra FDH content, it's patreon.com/freelance duck hunting. I will put the link in the description, and you can head over there and see what we've got going on. So anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and get on to this, and let's bring on Brent right now. Thank you for joining me today, Brent. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
So we had you on the podcast, and we did a whole hour on this book. I know you sent one out to me and Jordan, and I read through it, and man, I thought I was really enthralled by it. I loved reading it. And I would certainly say anyone that's really into waterfowl hunting is going to love this book. I've never been to Arkansas. I've never hunted the timber. But if you're an avid waterfowler, this certainly is going to be a book that's interesting to you. So why don't you just kind of give the viewers a little idea of what is this book about?
Sure. Yeah, this is a little different than a lot of the books that have been around, that have come out in the past. There was a book about 30 years ago, the Duck Hunter's Almanac, which covered the entire state of Arkansas, all four corners. And believe it or not, there's places you can hunt about all four corners. But obviously, the mecca is there in Stuttgart area, which is in the heart of the Grand Prairie. And the Grand Prairie has the longest history regarding its tie to waterfowling. So I spent about 2.5 years on the project, coming up with truly the A to Z history of this region. And did a little different than some other books that have come out recently. They've been more focused on specific clubs, some of the historic clubs. That's a small function of this book. We did write about some of the clubs, but in not the clubs themselves specifically, but really where they lay in some flyways that exist within the Grand Prairie. And then we covered places to eat, historic, monumental, historic things that have come along in the timeline, like when rice was first planted, when they started clearing timber all across that region, or even getting ready to the prairie grasslands, because that's where the Grand Prairie name comes from. That a lot of the area used to be covered in prairie grasses, and used to be quail and all kinds of other things to hunt there. But now it's primarily mallards, mostly ducks, but primarily mallards, obviously. And so those last few standing vestiges of timber provide both field hunting and, of course, the fatted green timber hunting.
Throughout the Duck Gun podcast, we've had so many guests on, and I can't tell you how many. If you say, what is your favorite type of hunting, they say flooded green timber, and I've never hunted anything like that. One thing about the book that was really interesting to me is, you hear this flooded timber, but I had no idea, how does it get flooded? What's the history of it? How did this kind of little mecca of duck hunting come to be? And how is the water transition and work? I found those topics really, really fascinating. Why don't you give for us is there one part of the book that you love to write about, or that you find extremely interesting that you could share?
Yeah, that evolution of the green timber hunting is pretty interesting. And not a lot of people know that history. Now there's what happens organically. Creeks and ditches and things like that get outside their banks and flood into the woods and create opportunities. But farmers got really smart about how to manage water on their farms and started building man-made reservoirs. They'd levee up a low area in their farm that they couldn't farm it, so they left the trees because mainly it was always underwater, but they couldn't hold the water. And a couple of brothers, the Tyndall brothers, figured out that they wanted to retain and manage water on their farm. They needed to be able to catch it by rainfall and runoff and everything else, and then levee it up, and then they could let it out when they needed it for rice farming, because rice farming requires a huge amount of water. It basically stands in water all summer long while it's growing, and then they drain it off to cut it. But the whole green timber reservoir portion of it almost came by accident. They flooded up this area on their farm to hold water for farming, and ducks fell in love with it. And so these now are littered all across the prairie, and it provide a manageable way to hunt water in the woods, which the ducks love. They come in there for the acorns, the invertebrates, place of refuge, and these kind of places can almost always have water, where the things that happen organically, river bottoms and things like that, sometimes your water's way up, sometimes it's way down. So that was a pretty fascinating piece to research and understand how these things all came about, because I've hunted a bunch of them, but as a kid and a young adult and all that, you didn't really understand how all this came to be. So and this is one of the few places on the planet you actually can experience. Mississippi has a little bit, Missouri's starting to have more, especially in southeast Missouri, but Arkansas is a pretty unique place in that way, being able to hunt the woods like that.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on and talking to us real quick. If anyone's watching this and they want to pick up one of these books, what's the best way that they can do that?
The best way online, because you can get it wherever you live in the country, and we've sold them coast to coast. Obviously, a lot of people come to Arkansas to hunt from everywhere. From one coast to the other. We sold a book to a guy in Beverly Hills when the book first came out. So best place is ArkansasGrandPrairie.com, which if they'll go on there and use a coupon code Freelance19 to go along here with your channel, we'll give them free shipping, so they can get the book sent to them that way. If they are in Arkansas this coming duck season, they can go to Max and pick it up. Max and Stuttgart carries it. That would be probably the best two opportunities to find the book, regardless of where you live.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Great information, and maybe we'll have you back on here sometime and talk a little bit more about some of your other endeavors.
Would love to. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Again, if you want to see that full interview with Brent over on the Duck Hunt podcast, I'll put the link in the description, and you can see that on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, any of the podcast places. I've been doing this podcast with Jordan Fromer and having so much fun with it. So anyway, hope you check out that and check out Brent's book as well. Until next time, happy hunting. I'll see you again later.